Welcome to the Bothell City Council regular meeting and study session of June 14th, 2016. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All council members are here. Councilmember McNeil, you wanted to start off with something real quick?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. And council members, I would like to have a moment of silence for the victims of Orlando. This was the world's third largest casualty and the nation's largest. So I'd like to have a moment of silence for the victims of Orlando.
All right, let's have a moment of silence. All right, thank you. Meeting agenda approval. Is there any changes to tonight's? Oh, I have one thing for a change to the agenda. There's a request from staff to have 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes for the AB 16-100, which is continued study session regarding the Fitzgerald sub-area update and key issues. Is there any other changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none. Let's see here. So that brings us to our visitors section. So I actually am going to read from the protocol manual. So each person addressing this council will give his or her name in an audible tone of voice for the record, and unless council grants further time, shall limit the address to 3 minutes. All remarks will be addressed to the council as a body and not to any member thereof. No person other than council and the person having the floor will be permitted to enter into any discussion either directly or through a member of the council without the permission of the mayor. And the first person is David Habowitz.
Sorry. You caught me way off guard. I'm not used to getting up to do this all so quickly. This evening I'm here to talk about child safety. 2 years ago I came and spoke about the road that travels down behind the Seattle Times on the hill. And in short, I'm looking for this to get added to the capital facilities plan. What I want to tell you about, and if you can see the photograph there, this is my daughter, first day of kindergarten, and she was very excited, not just because of the fact she's first day of kindergarten, but because she gets to ride the trailer bike to school. To children, a bike is freedom. So then she asks me for the 4th of July parade, hey Daddy, can we ride bikes to the parade, for the kids' parade? No, Daddy, I'm sorry. No, Ariel, I'm sorry, that it's too dangerous to ride down that hill. There's no sidewalk and the road is no good. Here are all of the places that she has asked to go to that she cannot get to from our house. Significant list. Just going to the YMCA for her swim lessons, going to watch us play softball, going to the library, going to McMillan's to watch a movie. No, but you can ride your bike to the movie theater in Woodinville from our house very safely, thank you. Here is that same road that we're talking about, and there's a blind curve at each end, which makes this particularly dangerous. But the part that matters most is the fact that there is no sidewalk and there is no shoulder like a bike lane for bicyclists or pedestrians. This is actually a photograph of a grandmother pushing her grandchild on a little scooter in the road. And you can see from this photograph how broken up the pavement is. This is actually looking the good way. Behind me is where the highway is really busted up. They come out and pave it about once a month. They'll patch the... So again, here it is, and you can see that it gets overgrown. The city is kind enough to come and mow that on occasion. This is in the summer. In the winter, it's all mud. Just, you can't walk on there. You have to walk on the road because it's just muck. So with that in mind, here is an example of some of the places that we're talking about. The North Creek ball fields, The YMCA is right there, and the section that matters is this stretch of road where it goes through the woods. It's 3/10 of a mile. That's it. But the road is broken up and it has no sidewalk whatsoever. There's sidewalk at either end to this. There's a bike trail or a bike lane at either end of this. The neighborhood that we're talking about, there are actually 4 neighborhoods up there. One of those we recently annexed. And there are over 1,000 households on that hill. That's probably about 10% or close to 10% of the city of Bothell. And this is our only connection to the rest of the city. So I'm asking that you add in the capital facilities plan the ability to add a sidewalk and a bike lane on that hill so that we can make it safe for the children to ride to their events or to walk to those events. Thank you.
Impeccable timing. The Public Works Director is here, and you can ask her about soon coming up listening sessions to put your request in formally. I guess this is formal as well, but if you actually wanted a belt and suspenders approach, you can do that as well.
As I understand, that's tomorrow, in fact. So,
Yeah, it's tomorrow.
great, thank you.
All right, next person is Al, I always get your name wrong, Fagenbaum. Thank you. The curmudgeon.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Al Feigenbaum, the curmudgeon. I'm here to continue my brief discussion I had with my question last week about the Wayne Golf Course. I'm still kind of, Trish Sandberg gave me a very good answer to my question, cleared it up for me, but I'm still puzzled as to why the city wants to spend all that money buying the Wayne Golf Course. I'm a little bit leery because, after all, I stand in this wonderful castle the city council decided to build with taxpayer money. And I just wonder, is this an impulse buy? You said in the bridge that you want input from the members of the community as to what you can do with the golf course. If you don't know what you can do with it, why are you buying it? I don't buy things I don't have any use for. Is there something going on that you're not telling the citizens here? I mean, we're all taxpayers. The city has no money. You get it from us and from you guys too. So I'm kind of confused. I'd like to know, I don't expect you to give me an answer now, but I'd like some clarification as to what your plans are for the golf course, if any. I got the impression there weren't any because of your request that we give you input. I can give you a little bit of input. I've been thinking about it. Well, what could we do with the Wayne Golf Course? Let's see. How about making it into a golf course? I think that would work. After all, golf courses bring in revenue. If you're going to turn it into a city parks don't bring in revenue. They cost revenue. They're on the expense side of the income statement balance sheet. Maybe Wayne Golf Course hasn't been run well. I don't know. I think the city of Seattle has a golf course. At least they did. You might want to talk to them and find out how they run a golf course and whether or not they're profitable. I don't play golf, so it doesn't matter to me, but I'm just, the whole thing is kind of funny that you want to buy a golf course and there's no plan for it. It's a lot of money. If you're worried about a developer getting his hands on it, you guys can control that through ordinances and the planning commission and zoning. So I hope that sometime in the near future you'll be able to give us citizens an answer to exactly what in the world you want to buy the golf course for, if you don't have a plan for it. Thank you.
Councilmember Sandberg.
I just wanted to point out to the speaker that next Wednesday, June 23rd, from 6 to 8 p.m., there is a Wayne Golf Course public meeting. It's a visioning workshop, the second one, and it's going to be held here. And so if you come to that, you can see, or people, members of the audience here or listening can see schematics and potential plans for the park, and also give their ideas, like what we've heard from you, which is to maybe just continue to keep it as a golf course. That is one option. So that's next Wednesday, June 23rd. And then just to reiterate from the previous speaker, tomorrow night, June 15th, from 5:30 to 7 here is our second open house on the capital facilities plan and the upcoming biennial budget. So there's a biennial budget update. So you have, so tomorrow here, 5:30 to 7 p.m. is the capital facility plan and budget open house. And next Wednesday, June 23rd, from 6 to 8 p.m. is the second Wayne Golf Course visioning meeting.
Next speaker is Judy Carpenter.
Good evening. Let's go back in time for a moment. It all started in December 2014 with a notice posted at Wayne Golf Course from the Planning Commission to rezone the 4.7 acres of Wayne Golf Course comprised of the clubhouse and parking lot. A group of our neighbors from the village of River Bend, River Park, and Valhalla got together to discuss what could be done. This group went to the December 12, 2014 Planning Commission meeting to voice their concerns and ask good questions regarding the impact of any development on that property. Also at that meeting, it was announced that the back nine was under negotiations to be sold. Because of our concerns, the Planning Commission delayed the decision to recommend this property for rezone to the City Council as part of the 2015 Comprehensive Plan Update. In January 2015, One Bothell was formed with its mission statement to preserve the Wayne Golf Course land situated along the Sammamish River and Burke-Gilman Trail for recreation, education, and fish and wildlife habitat. The purchase by Forterra of the back nine was formalized in February 2016, and the purchase of the front nine was formalized in May of this year. As a continuing step forward in this vision, I ask the Council to formally approve the Memorandum of Understanding for Wayne Golf Course between King County and the City of Bothell. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Sandberg.
I misspoke. The Wayne Golf Course Visioning Committee workshop is next Thursday, June 23rd.
June 23rd.
Not Wednesday, Thursday, June 23rd.
Thank you. Sandy Alto.
Sandy Alto it is. Nice to see everybody on council. And I'm here to reiterate what Judy said and encourage everyone on council to approve the memorandum between the City of Bothell and King County Parks, King County, to acquire the Wayne Golf Course acquisition. And I want to make a comment. Every single person on this dais and so many people in this staff, residents of Bothell, other cities, King County, other counties, conservation organizations, and the state were involved in the acquisition of this land. And though it was pretty hostile on some accounts, I think all of you should be very, very proud of this very, very beautiful thing that you are doing, not just for this community, but for Puget Sound. And I'm very proud as a resident that we have managed to come together and negotiate this outcome. You know, as a society, there's a proverb, we grow great if we plant trees that we may never sit under, we may never see the shade of. And that could be true literally or figuratively, right? We build the foundation of a great city, or we build a healthy ecosystem for the future. And because of that, I think everyone needs to consider that the eyes of the future are looking back on us, and they are praying. They are praying that we see before and into the future, and not just for our time, but for their time. And we're doing that by preserving the Wayne land. I may not be able to enjoy everything that the Wayne land may become. Could be a skate park, could be dog parks, could be partially a golf course, could be trails, could be biking trails, could be disc golf, could be fish coming back to the stream. But whether I enjoy it or not, I am very, very thankful to all of you for making this happen. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is David Bain.
Okay. I'm also here to speak in favor of adopting the MOU with King County over how to proceed with the acquisition of the Wayne Golf Course. The community has been giving excellent support for the effort to protect the land from development. In the visioning process so far, the public has been supportive of using much of the land for salmon recovery and trails, but also wants some of the land set aside for educational and recreational uses. King County has a strong interest in conservation of the land since the health of the river in Bothell affects policy decisions throughout the watershed. However, it is appropriate for cities to own land within city limits. Thus, the ownership model of the county holding conservation easements over most of the land, the city owning and managing all of the land, and the city having exclusive control of portions of the land not in conservation status makes sense. Having the city lead engagement with the public also makes sense because Bothell residents will be impacted the most by land use decisions there. Having an online survey to accept public input allows a wider audience to participate in the decision-making process. An important element of the memorandum is the joint pursuit of funding, combining the resources of King County, the City of Bothell, Forterra, and One Bothell has allowed us to pursue far more funding than any of the entities would have been able to do alone, and providing feedback on each other's proposals has increased their quality and probability of success. Another important component is exploration of the in lieu fee mitigation program. This could be a source of revenue to help maintain the land at no cost to the city. This effort is making Bothell a role model for the region. Other cities are starting to look at projects with regional significance as something they can take on, even though they would not be able to do so with their own resources alone. The public-private partnerships between groups like Friends of North Creek Forest, One Bothell, and Forterra with the city is also seen as a way to increase capacity, both to raise funds and to maintain land once it is acquired. This agreement is the next step on Bothell's path to regional leadership. Thank you for consideration of this MOU.
Thank you. Next person is Sharon Dimmitt.
Well, hello, Council and Council President. I have several different small things to say. First of all, thinking about Orlando, I would like to also have us think about the really good Muslim people we have in our community. I know that several of the mosques have been threatened and are requiring police protection, and that to me is no way. I mean, that's not American. That's number one. Number two, I want to really compliment the council. We elected you to do some things, and so far, I think you have been spot on doing the things that the community has asked for. We want all of the Wayne Golf Course. I think every square inch of the golf course can only be an asset to us. I can't imagine that we couldn't come up with incredibly wonderful projects. I'm looking forward to it. Excuse me, to it. But then finally, on the news quite often now, there's been all this earthquake things, you know, this, that, and the other thing. They have all these ways that they're going to help if we have this major earthquake. And I know that the fire departments in the other cities have been majorly involved, and I know our fire department probably doesn't have the funds, but let's be real. Even if we had a well-equipped fire department with an earthquake, very likely they couldn't get to my house, or, well, I live right by the fire department, but they could not get to all the different areas where people would be in need. And I really think that we need to have some sort of encouragement plan, something where do we know your neighbors, and do you know the skills that they have? How can they help? Can we kind of group together in our little units and maybe see if we can actually help each other? I don't want the big one to come. but I would like for us to be prepared if it does.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Spivey?
Great, thank you. If you could reach out to the chief or call the fire department tomorrow during business hours, there is a program called CERT, and it's Citizens Emergency Response Teams, and they do a lot of what you're talking about in that they train people to help each other in some basic search and rescue, talk about how to have your home prepared and where to shut things off in that type of environment. So I think that's a great starting point for you, and that we do have that in our community right now, and there are citizens throughout Bothell that are currently trained as CERT volunteers. So that's something that maybe in working with the chief, you could help organize in your neighborhood also.
Could maybe we put a little article in the newspaper saying that there is availability through CERT or something, so that people
Could you come back up to the mic, please? Thank you.
Is there a way to maybe put an article in the local newspaper or something telling people who have no idea that it exists, that it does, and maybe other people can?
I bet we could get something in the next Bothell Bridge or one of the more recent flyers that we have coming out. I know that there's been articles in the past in that, so I bet we could come up with another one.
Okay,
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Sandberg?
I know that this topic, emergency preparedness, has been the topic of a previous Bothell Bridge, because I was the council corner for that issue. And so I know that the city participates in emergency preparedness planning, in workshops, but I'm not sure that the citizens, remember to dig out that old Bothell Bridge. And so I'm wondering if it might be possible to add something to a future agenda where staff can make a presentation about what the city would do in the event of an emergency, and how they communicate with the public, encourage people to sign up on Facebook, because if power is out, people aren't going to be accessing emails. So I think maybe it's a good opportunity to periodically talk about that, and maybe we could even clip whatever the presentation is given to council, clip it, and then put it up on the website, and so people can become informed about what they would do and what the city is able to do in such a situation.
Okay, next speaker, oh, I'm sorry, were you done? I don't want to cut you off.
Well, is that okay with council to have staff do that at some future meeting?
So we're in the visitors section.
Okay, sorry.
I'll bring it, I know you won't be here next week, but when we look at the projected agenda, I will add it for you. Next person is Sarah Glarum.
Good evening. I'm coming tonight to talk about two topics. I'm going to talk really fast. So I'm sorry about that, but I've only got 3 minutes. The first one I'm here for is a memorandum of understanding. And I did watch the city council meeting last week in the privacy of my own home on Wednesday morning in my jammies, drinking coffee. It was a long meeting, and I saw that as you got to the end, you were ready to vote on that, the motion to allow the acting city attorney to sign that memorandum of understanding. And then there was a wait, we need to have the citizens' input. Now, I'm a citizen, and I appreciate that you want to hear from me, but I feel like you've heard from me and the rest of us week after week after week after month after month after month. Well, we got to this place, and we got to it, and we've already started the visioning meeting. I went to it, and I'll be going to the next one. And this, as I read it, the memorandum is simply it's not a binding agreement. It says that very clearly, and it doesn't create any legal rights, and it can be actually gotten out of by the parties. It's just intended to summarize where we are with King County in terms of the project, and it's a very helpful document. But I know that you want to be transparent, and the transparency issue is huge. But for your sakes, I'm asking you, don't do redundancy, because that just makes more work for everyone. So I'm here to say, yes, please, please vote for the city manager, the acting manager, to sign that memorandum, because it's a really good one. Now, there's transactional things coming up. It says if there are then you really would like to hear from the citizens on that if we're going to enter into a binding transactional agreement over this. So that's one topic. Second, I talked to the city librarian today, the Bothell librarian. She's at King County Library Services. Now, you know I'm on the library board, but I'm not here that way today. But I want to tell you about a program that's going to be at the library on Wednesday of next week, the 22nd, the day before the other meeting. I'm glad we cleared that up. This is KUOW coming to Bothell. They've picked 8 neighborhoods. They're bringing their reporters and their producers, and they are calling it a listening project because they want to know how growth is changing and challenging our region. This is KUOW talking. We want to hear about the trade-offs, the compromises, the opportunities and threats, how growth affects the way you live. And beyond growth, what else is happening in your neighborhood that we need to know? What is the untold story of your neighborhood? I think it'd be great if somebody from council can be there 6:30 to 8, Wednesday night, Bothell Library. That's it. Oh, and the interim city manager you've chosen, I have a friend who works at Lake City, she used to work at Lake Forest Park in the city staff. You have picked a gem of a person, so thank you very much.
Thank you. I was contacted by KUOW as well. So if there are people interested and would like to sign up, apparently I can, somehow they asked me and I can get people on the agenda for them to interview. Just email me or call me. My phone number's on the website, and let me know that they want a full spectrum of people too. They don't want just one side of the story. They want everybody. So just let me know if you're interested in doing that. Did I see a hand over here? Oh, okay. I'll get it for you. Next person is Monica Hubbard, I think? Hubert.
Monica Hubert, 9627 Riverbend Drive. Yes, very shortly, I just wanted to also recommend that you adopt and move forward now with a memorandum of understanding. And let's keep going with this. Let's not stop and stall. I'd like to see us move ahead in a timely manner. So I just wanted to add that so you know another voice is speaking up for it. Thank you.
Thank you. First name is Will, the second name is KNED, and then unlegible. Will, please give your name for the record.
I apologize. My name is Will Knedlik. My mailing address is Box 99, Kirkland. I'm secretary of the East Side Transportation Association. I'm here tonight to join with your constituents in praising you for your regional leadership. And in particular, in taking the lead in working with a coalition of I-405 cities on input for the ST3 plan, and in particular, BRT on I-90. I just want to remind you that because of the oddities of the way math works at Sound Transit and WSDOT, essentially every dollar that's invested in BRT on I-405 will be reimbursed will be given credit by WSDOT into the so-called land bank. And effectively, the only thing we're going to pay is the time value of money because WSDOT will credit all the money we invest in BRT. It's a very unique situation. We invest a couple of $1 billion and we are reimbursed it by WSDOT. So I urge you to continue to press that. We would also urge you to continue your leadership at ETP, where your input has been very valuable of late, because there are two issues that have arisen. And there was quite a contentious meeting at ETP last Friday, as some of you know and others may have heard, because among other things, the mayor of Clyde Hill has indicated that his constituents don't want to know the average amount of the cost of ST3. They want to know what it would cost for their house. And a recommendation was made at that meeting, and I'm going to provide you copies of that, that there be an online calculator that will allow people to plug in the number of cars, the number of motorcycles, the number of trucks, the number of trailers, the address of their home so that we can get the property evaluation, and their income so that we can get the tax valuation. Because as indicated here, if you in fact do the math, it's quite clear that the amount will not be on average $400. The average will be $2,280 per year for 25 years for about $50,000 in local taxes for Sound Transit 3. It'll be higher in some communities, lower in others. But I hope you will support the concept of getting honest figures to the voters before they vote on this. The second thing is it's not 1996 anymore. We're in a situation now where sub-area equity can allow the costs to be allocated by sub-area based on the actual usage of the system. The new CEO at Sound Transit has actually recommended this for the second Seattle downtown transit tunnel. But the fact of the matter is all East King County sub-area allocation should be based on the actual usage of the system, which the ORCA card can capture with essentially complete accuracy. And I hope that you'll support both these, and I'll give my testimony here to ETP for your staff to distribute.
Great, thank you. That's the end of our sign-up sheets. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to? Okay. Ann Agard.
Ann Agard. I wish to extend my appreciation to the Public Works Department and the road crew for the excellent job they have done in cutting the grass and the shrubbery along our city roads and streets. It has just been exceptional. They got it done early. And they did a very thorough job, and they went further than, for example, King County had ever done by either turning the blade and cutting up the hillside, in some cases cutting down. So this is not only an aesthetic issue, it's not only a safety issue, but it is also a health issue. And for people like myself who have a great deal of allergies, this has been a horrible year with a lot of grass, a lot of pollen coming on early because of our weather. And now this rain that we've had just takes that heavy grass pollen and blows it. So I really appreciate it. And thanks to the Public Works Director and the road crew for doing this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to? Okay, go ahead and, oh, there you got two. Oh, go ahead.
James Barnhart, Evening Council. First off, I'd just like to start with thanking the Bothell Fire Department, who I think is very professional in coming to my house in a timely manner for a fire that we experienced a month and a half ago. They got there in time, saved the house. Very kind, very courteous. Also would like to thank Sergeant Al Blaisdell, who was there, who called me on my way back to the house. Highly respect the guy. Super nice. Then I'd like to go on and talk about skate park. Why don't we have a skate park yet? Supposedly we had stuff in storage. We talked about getting a place for it. I drive through Kenmore every day. Little old Kenmore built a beautiful skate park for their kids. Go up to Briars Park. Look at their skate park. Why don't we have a skate park? Is it because we don't care about our kids? Don't we have the money for it? Which is probably true. Then next on my agenda is to thank Del Spivey for a couple weeks ago for sticking up for citizens like myself coming up to this podium and clarifying what protocol calls out and what we can say up here and who we can call out. The only thing I'd like to correct is he brought up Bothell versus Barnhart, or Bothell versus Barnhart Supreme Court, which was not the accurate case for that. It was it was Bothell Barnhart in my federal lawsuit when they blocked my access to this council. And then also, I got so much stuff rattling around in my head. Oh, Peter Eglett firm. A year ago, there's kind of a misnomer. When Joe Beck was here, it was kind of thrown out there that his firm was just picked out of a hat, that he was a neutral figure in the investigation into ethics with Josh Freed and the golf course. That's not true, because Peter Eglett was also the one who represented the city of Bothell and Josh Freed and Carol Cummings and Mark Lamb in my federal lawsuit. So it wasn't exactly like they didn't know this guy. And then also, last thing, I'd like to ask or find out from the city attorney, now city attorney interim, if it is legal for the city prosecutor's legal assistant to give assistance to people in terms of legal advice, whether or not that's legal, since he's not bar certified. And I'd appreciate an answer to that. Thank you.
City Attorney, I don't know if, or Acting City Attorney, I don't know if you have business cards, but could you provide Mr. Barnhart with a business card? Thank you. And there was one more gentleman, please, could bring, do you have a sign-up sheet, or? Or you could just, there it is, okay. Just say your name for the record.
My name is Julian Vrieslander, and I live in the River Bend community. And I'll be very brief. I'd like to add my voice to those supporting the Memorandum of Understanding to transition the Wayne Golf Course. I'm a relatively new resident in this community. We moved here 3 years ago as renters, and it was partly the process of negotiating the destiny of the Wayne Golf Course that induced me and my partner to want to stay here. So we bought our unit. And we've been very pleased at the transparency, the interactivity of the discussion that's been going on between the citizens and the council. We look forward to the next visioning meeting, and as one curmudgeon to another, I hope to hear all voices from people who are interested in seeing some of the great ideas that have been offered for the development of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak tonight? Seeing none, we'll go into new business. So AB 16-097, consider approval of professional service agreement for interim city manager services with Robert Jean. And opening off is our Human Resources Director, Dean Perez.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. I'm presenting this agenda bill tonight for your council to consider the appointment of Robert W. Jean as the city's interim city manager and authorize acting city manager Trodston to sign the professional services agreement, which is attached in your agenda packet tonight.
That's it? That's the presentation?
I could go on.
No, that's okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward, Mayor.
Do council members have any questions? The HR Director. Councilmember Freed?
Yeah, let me look it up really quick. I think it's on the last page of the agreement. As a council, we're setting the salary or the contract amount, but then it goes on to state that the mayor has the ability and rights in one of the exhibits. Actually, I think it is on the second to last page. Yeah, Exhibit B talks about the consultant shall be paid a flat monthly fee of $16,000, inclusive of all compensation plus directly related expenses on city's behalf, business meals, local travel, not including travel to and from work, conference registration, and lodging as approved by the mayor within budget amounts. Typically with issues like this, doesn't this come before council? We set the budget for what would be spent, rather than just giving full rights to the mayor individually.
I'm not really sure what the history is on that. I may defer to the city attorney or to the finance director on that.
Maybe I misunderstood the question, but as I read the contract language, it says that the mayor would have to approve conference registration and lodging within budgeted amounts. So whatever the budget currently provides for that sort of compensation, would have to be approved by the mayor before it gets paid. And then annually or biannually, as you do your budget, you'll just set new limits. Did I misunderstand your question?
So you're saying as a council, we are already set that budget, what, for the city manager's position?
Correct.
For those types, so we have maybe a $15,000 set aside for those type of random
Yeah,
expenses?
I don't know what the amount is, but you have something set aside, I know that.
Okay, and then payment should be made to the city's monthly billing cycle. Total of monthly compensation under this agreement shall not exceed 104,000. 6 months times 16,000 equals 104,000. Nice math to put in there. Okay, so you think that's within the rights of the mayor, and that's how we should operate?
Right, well, the city manager is appointed by the council. The council works with the city manager, and the city manager basically operates as a CEO for the city. So the council can choose how it interacts with the city manager. And I didn't think this was out of line, but it wasn't called to my attention expressly either. So I haven't been here long enough to know what your usual procedures are.
Usual procedure is the budget is set, and then it's at the discretion of the city manager for those type of fees for conferences and such. So we don't individually give direction to the city manager, whether it's an interim or not.
Okay.
So I think that it's probably best that a budget is set and we leave it to the good discretion of the interim city manager to spend it accordingly.
Well, you can, I don't think it's my call to make. You can certainly take that up with the council, and controls on expenditures are generally good things, but, it's your business.
Sure, absolutely. I wonder if the finance director would be able to share with us what that budget amount is.
For the city manager's position, the base salary?
No, the business lodging as let's see, the business meals, local travel, not including travel to and from work, conference registration, and lodging as approved within that budget amount for that position.
Actually, it's not set aside just for the city manager, it's for the entire executive department. And I don't know what the number is offhand. I can find that out for you, but the position, if a city manager is going out of state or going to a conference, it is actually approved usually by the city attorney. And so there's somebody who looks at it for reasonability, and then it also comes through my office and gets audited there for reasonability.
And that's how it's been done for at least 10 years that I've been here,
At least
or more.
17.
Has the mayor ever had a right to limit? Like, this seems to be the first time I've ever seen this language.
Usually it is discussed during the budget development process, and there's a certain amount that is appropriated for each department. And we usually provide, or it's asked for, a itemized listing of out-of-town travel expenses, what they're for, the lodging, the actual conference, et cetera. So council usually sees an itemized list before they adopt the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember McNeil?
So just to clarify, should that be mayor or council?
It's the council. That's what it's been in the past. The council can decide when they adopt a budget to have it be considered by the mayor if they'd like. But in the past, it's always been the council who appropriates the funding at the line item level.
Any other questions? None? Okay. So motion's in order. Deputy Mayor? Oh, I'm sorry.
I move that we appoint Robert W. Jean as interim city manager and authorize the acting city manager to sign the professional services agreement.
It's moved by Councilmember Sandberg, seconded by Councilmember Agnew to appoint Robert Jean as interim city manager and authorize the acting city manager to sign the agreement. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember Freed.
Great. I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, and that would be on Exhibit B to replace business, travel, and such as approved by mayor, to strike mayor and say city attorney.
I'll second it. Is there any discussion on the amending motion? Are we good on the voting buttons? Okay, just checking. All right, let's vote. Passes unanimously. We're back to the main motion. Is there any further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, place your vote, and this is to appoint Robert Jean as interim city manager and authorize this acting city manager to sign the agreement as amended by the amending motion. Passes 6 approving and 1 abstention. Passes. So did you want to speak to your abstention? Okay. Mr. Jean, you wanted to have an opportunity to talk to us real quick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I wasn't sure whether I should be here tonight or not, but I'll keep this very brief. I definitely want to thank Sarah Glarin for her wonderful endorsement. I take all of those you can get as a city manager. I'm sure there'll come days where they're not always as glaring, but I'm glad I passed that test. Actually, the one issue I did want to ask council about, and I think we sent you an email ahead of time, but I would like to get with you all as a group as soon as we can. There's some things I need to figure out. First, I need to get with the department directors and the finance director and a few things I need to sort out. But I think anytime after the 4th of July, if we could find maybe a Friday night and a Saturday day that could work around your schedules. I think the date that I was suggesting was like July 15, 16, or after that point. But I don't want to go too far after that because I really want your input as we start to dig into this budget issue. So I'll leave it to council to decide how you want to proceed with that. But other than that, thank you very much for the confidence. Look forward to working with you all, and I've already started meeting with some of the staff. I'm very impressed. I'm excited, and we'll get to work starting tomorrow morning. Thank you all.
Great, thank you, Mr. Jean. I look forward to working with you as well. I just wanted to have just a brief moment here. I wrote this email to the acting city manager, Peter Trotzen, who's now our assistant city manager. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to read it out loud. You okay with that? I know you're not into this sort of thing, but okay, here we go. So I wrote this and asked for it to be put in his personnel file, but I thought it was worth reading. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Peter, for the amazing job you have done being acting city manager. I can tell you from my experience of 4.5 years on council that you have demonstrated a level of professionalism and leadership that I hadn't experienced. You had a tough situation to step up in, which was in part my fault, and you were right there with us throughout the storm. I keep thinking about the wisdom you passed to me about how to handle a helicopter in a major storm. I don't know if people knew this, but he was a Coast Guard helicopter pilot. I lost my spot. You told me a relaxed pilot in a storm flies much smoother and had to relax more than normal in really bad storms so that you didn't make everyone on board sick. I thought about that a lot through this last month. I much appreciate the discussions we've had where you typically provide a quote of uttermost relevance to the discussion from one of the great leaders of our nation and world in some cases. You were always there for me, and I definitely needed you, and in any time of the day and the week. I truly learned a lot from you, and I will always value your input and perspective. Last, I appreciate your patriotism, your commitment to democracy, and your commitment to our city. I'm honored to have worked with you as acting city manager and look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. So thank you, and thank you for stepping up for our city. So next on our agenda is AB 16-098, which is consider authorizing the acting city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city of Bothell and King County Parks, clarifying the mutual interest to complete the Wayne Golf Course acquisition. And we have our Parks Director, John Keats.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I don't have any additions to my staff report from last week, but am certainly welcome to answer any more questions you might have.
Great, thank you. Is there any questions from council? All right, the motion's in order.
So I moved authorize the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city of Bothell and King County Parks, clarifying mutual interest to complete the Wayne Golf Course acquisition.
Second.
So it's moved by Councilmember McNeil, and it was a tie on the second, so I'll give it to Councilmember Sandberg to authorize the city manager to sign a memorandum of understanding between the city of Bothell and King County Parks, clarifying the mutual interest to complete the Wayne Golf Course acquisition. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilmember McNeil.
I just wanted to thank everybody in the community for coming out once again and voicing your concerns and interest in making sure that we as a city do the right thing for the entire community. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. Please always do reach out to us because we are here, we want to hear from you, and that's how we get things done, by working together. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilmember Freed.
Great, thank you. So I just want to state, this is nice to see coming forward. I'm hoping that we'll hear from the committee the amount of grants that are out there. We haven't discussed what the purchase price is going to be from Forterra, so hopefully that information will be forthcoming. Looking forward to the community outreach events where people can come and speak about what ideas are there. My hope is that a golf course could stay, or the swimming pool that I've discussed several times with Woodinville, Kenmore, Kirkland, and Bothell could potentially be sited on the back nine. Could see that as a great opportunity at the crossroads of many different cities. So the next, I understand there may be some individual contributors that might help this as well. Ultimately, if this comes to an increase of taxes for our citizens, I think it's right that they would have the opportunity to take part in that conversation. I also don't want us to lose focus because of all 7 of us that sit up here. There is a great deficiency of parks in Snohomish County as it compared to King County. And we're all King County folks. I know we all say we're for one Bothell as a whole, and I believe that we are all for Bothell as a whole, but we do need to recognize that we need to have some more representation of parks in Snohomish County. So let's make that a concerted effort as well. Thanks.
Any further discussion on the motion? So I would just like to say real quick that, so it's amazing that King County is doing this. I've worked with King County for the last 15 years, and seeing King County come to the rescue of a city is something that's extremely rare, just to shows the actual support and the importance of this project. There's been millions already allocated to this project from the state and from the, well, it's state money anyways, but the Y-Rate Salmon Recovery Council. So there'll be more to come on that. And the committee is meeting every 2 weeks. We meet every Monday. People are welcome to be there. I think it's advertised. It's not a full council, just 3 of us there, but anybody's welcome to come and be in the audience. But the important part is that we have community meetings scheduled, and Councilmember Sandberg, you just brought it up earlier. Is it June 23rd?
Thursday, June 23rd.
All right, Thursday, June 23rd. So that's your next opportunity, and then there will be a study session where the consultant will come back and present to the full council the results from the community meetings, as well as there'll be an additional meeting coming pretty soon to discuss where things are at financially with the acquisition of the land with grant funding. So, all right. Does anybody else want to speak to the motion or discussion? All right, let's vote. Does everybody understand the vote? Okay. Passes unanimously. So we are on to study session items, and we're AB 16-099, which is a study session regarding the park impact fee report. And with us is the Parks Director, John Keats.
Thank you again, Mayor and members of council. Yes, we came before you earlier this year and did a preliminary report on the park impact fee update process. Recall the park impact fees haven't been updated since 1997. So the consulting team, primarily with Mr. Randy Young here, will be presenting tonight. We've met with staff and he's brought forth a number of recommendations, and we are looking forward to bringing that to you tonight. Last Thursday night, we presented to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, so they were up to date on the process thus far. And so I'll with that, probably just turn it over to Randy Young. He has a PowerPoint presentation to go through, and at the end we can certainly answer any questions, concerns from council. So, Randy?
Thank you, John. Mayor and council members, I'm joined this evening by other key members of our team, Chris Mefford and Michaela Jellicoe from Community Attributes have been actively involved with me in this project and are here in case we get into questions in their areas of expertise. As John mentioned, we've briefed you earlier about the direction we intended to take in updating your park impact fee, and as John mentioned, it's been quite a number of years since it has been updated. And we reviewed those same ideas about changes in methodologies with the park board before we met with you in March. And we've now met with the park board to talk about the calculations. Given that this is essentially a financial question, it really isn't a public policy question for the park board to weigh in on. So they're not providing you with a specific recommendation, yay or nay. But we wanted them to be fully aware of what direction the city council may choose to take about a revenue source that's near and dear to their hearts, because it helps pay for parks and for recreational facilities and for open space. So with that in mind, I'm going to spend the first couple of minutes very quickly going over some information we went through before when we met in March, just reminding you and the audience what the basic rules are about impact fees, and then we're going to spend a few minutes in the details of how we did the calculations, what information did we accumulate, and how did we come up with the numbers that we've come up with. And then we'll move into a comparison of what the new numbers look like compared to the old and compared to neighboring communities that you're often compared to, so you can see how that looks. Then we're going to have an alternative for your consideration, and then we'll end with a brief chance for questions and discussion. So after we talk about what impact fees are and then the calculations, we'll deal with an option that will that deals with only residential development, and then we'll talk about the questions. So this is information that we've talked about before. An impact fee is something that somebody pays once, and the only people who pay it are new development. So if you're not developing, you don't pay it, and if you are developing, you pay it once and it's done. So it's not an ongoing tax or fee that's charged to the community. It's charged for the purpose of paying for capital costs. So that's big, long-term, expensive stuff, like the dirt that is underneath the park, that is the park, like the improvements at the park, the ball fields and the restrooms and the signs and the like. And it has to be capital facilities that are needed by new development. And this is critical because if you needed something before the new development got here, impact fees cannot be charged to new development to make up for a problem you already have. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we identified what your level of service is and why we're going to ask new folks to match that rather than to better it, because our law prohibits us from making them pay more than we're able to provide for ourselves. Now, governments charge impact fees for essentially three reasons. Number one is for the money to help pay for new parks. Number two is a matter of policy. A lot of cities could pay for parks in another way. They could go to the voters with a bond issue and say, why don't we who live here pay for the parks that will serve new development? But most cities in this generation are saying if new development's coming here, we wouldn't, because there are new developments coming here, we need additional parks, and we need for them to partner with us, for the new development to share in the cost of that, and hence the basis for impact fees. There are nearly 80 cities in the state of Washington that have park impact fees. It's the most popular form of impact fees, cities making clear to new development that they need to partner with the city government in making sure the park system grows as the community grows. Which leads us last but not least to the quality of life issue. A really good park system speaks well of a city and is attractive to a city and is actively used by its residents as something to do and an enjoyable reason for living in the community. Now, there's limits on what park impact fees can pay for. We are allowed to pay for something called system improvements. That term is in quotes because it comes right out of Washington statutes. And what it means in plain language is it has to be something that's in your long-term plan for major capital investments. There's two abbreviations up there, CFP and CIP. That stands for Capital Facilities Plan and Capital Improvement Program. And those are the documents that you already have as a well-managed city that says where you're going in the next 5 or years, 6 years. What are the parks you want to build? What are the improvements at the parks? What open space do you want to acquire? If it's in that document, we can include it in our impact fee calculation. But until it's in the document, we cannot collect impact fees for it. And I think that's particularly important to understand because at this moment in time, the document that we were working with did not include the Wayne Golf Course acquisition. And so when you next update this, hopefully a lot faster than another 10 or 15 years, you'll be able to put the Wayne Golf Course acquisition in there and earn impact fees for it. But the fees we're bringing to you tonight, we can't use that money because the project wasn't in either one of these documents. Things that we cannot pay for, in addition to things that are outside the document, are things that are essentially private. So if you have a subdivision and it has a homeowners association and the developer decides to, as an amenity, to create a little tot lot or some place to, for walking dogs or kids or whatever, that private property doesn't meet the test of state law. These impact fees are required to be for public parks and recreational facilities. And we can't pay for fixing existing capital items that are broken. So if we need to repair or replace a set of bleachers or a restroom or something else that isn't working well, but it doesn't expand the capacity of the park system, the impact fee can't help us out. There are 4 rules that come from our state laws about impact fees. The first we call the fair share rule. This goes back to the comment I made earlier that we can ask growth to pay for what it needs. We cannot ask growth to pay for a problem that pre-existed. Second rule, again, these phrases are somewhat out of the state statute. There has to be a reasonable need and a proportional share. What it means is the amount of the fee, how much you charge a particular house or apartment or business, has to relate to the amount of impact that that house or apartment or business creates on your park system. And in our report, we have the data that demonstrates that and shows how many people occupy a typical house or apartment and how many employees and visitors there are at a typical business. That creates the proportionality that we have to have. A rule called the credits rule means that you can't double charge, meaning that if you're going to ask a new development to pay for their share of the parks, but if you are also asking that new development to pay some other taxes or fees that you are using for new parks, that would be double dipping. You'd be asking them to pay twice for the same thing. For example, if you use part of your real estate excise tax revenue to underwrite part of the cost of a park project, when new development occurs and the property is sold, there's a real estate excise tax payment, and that goes into the pot, and part of that goes into that park project. Part of our calculations and our study did a detailed examination of where the other money comes from, the relationship of that to the need for development, and we can assure you that we've taken into account this no double dipping rule, and the numbers we're recommending don't violate that rule. The last thing, and this is unique to our state of Washington, is you can do all this cool stuff and figure out how much development really owes you, but then you can't charge them all of that just because the legislature said you can't. It specifically says you may not rely solely on impact fees as a way of paying for growth share. So, okay, if you can't charge them 100%, what can we charge them? 99, 98, 50, 10? Legislature chose not to give us any guidance, so it's up to us to figure out what that number is. In complying with the other rules, the proportionality and the non-double charging rules, we've already identified some other money that takes us below the 100%, so we're safe. But if we had calculated a number that had been 100%, we would have had to have discounted it. In your case, we didn't get to that point. So let's talk about how the fees are calculated. You wouldn't have an impact fee unless you had growth, and Bothell clearly has growth, so we've drawn on your comprehensive planning document as a principal source of your estimates of what kind of growth is going to occur. And in the next 8 or 10 slides, you're going to see a little title like this one says City of Bothell population. And then in parentheses, it's going to say EX, that's an abbreviation for exhibit. And then number 2 means if you had our rate study document in front of you and open it up to page 10, you'd find this table. So anybody who wants to track back to our document can do so along with this slideshow. What we see here is that forecasting out the same time period as your capital facilities plan, that is the next 6 years out to the year 2021, we see the population growing up to a total of 45,698 residents. In addition to the residents, however, there's also going to be growth in your economy and therefore in employment, and we are proposing, as we told you last March, to include the commercial property as also being liable for paying a development impact fee. And so we've listed here the estimates of the growth and in some rare cases the decline of estimated future employment in all the broad categories that are normally tracked by the employment experts and by the Puget Sound Regional Council folks. Now, taking employees and trying to equate them with residents leads us into some interesting situations, because an employee isn't here the same number of hours of the day, but an employee attracts other people like customers to the business. And so we have embarked on and done a calculation that we call equivalent population. It takes its history from utilities. When you approve utility rates and you say a house is going to owe us $100, if you say that businesses owe you something, it's on a multiple of how many houses it's equal to. If a small business was the same as 4 houses, then it would owe you $400. That's the equivalency. We've done the same thing here with population. We have detailed a technical appendix that says for each kind of business, there are a certain number of employees per square foot. There are a certain number of visitors for that kind of business. They are there a certain number of hours of the day. And from all this, we calculate the first column on this, the equivalent population coefficient. Take that coefficient and put it in a little more plain mathematical language. Think of it as a percentage. So the second one on the table, construction, 0.1986. Think of 0.1986 as 19%. So we're saying that one construction employee is the same as 19% of a resident. It's based on the relative amount of times they each spend in town and therefore have access to our park system. And you'll see that the permanent population, a person who lives here isn't counted as 100%. They're counted as 93% because we account for the fact that they are out of town part of the time and their access to the park is only certain hours of the day. The retail trade one's kind of interesting. One retail employee is equal to 200% two residences. Even though that employee is only there 6, 8, 10 hours a day, they're bringing in lots of customers. And all of those folks have access to and benefit from a healthy park system. And so this table then allows us to calculate the current population in the third column, the total of 55,708. Now remember, the previous slide said we had 45,000 people in the future, or 41,000 in the current. We're now saying there's 55,000 equivalent population. That's residents plus employees plus customers and visitors. We have a growth forecast in the column, the 2021 horizon year of 63,000 people. And in the far right-hand column is our total growth of 7,900 people. That's going to be a key number in a couple of slides when we start dividing up how much each person needs to pay and what total we need to pay for all of them. We begin the next step of our calculation by saying, what are your parks worth today? That's what we're asking newcomers to match. The old way of thinking was to tell them, we need for you to have an acre of park for every 1,000 population, or 3 acres of park for every 1,000 population. Those kinds of standards are from the 80s, and they are national guidelines that don't really capture things other than the dirt. So let's say we have 3 acres of park per 1,000 population. How do we make improvements? How do we get skateboard parks? How do we get tennis courts? How do we get the improvements on top of it? What the cities are doing that are doing this best now is they're putting a value on their park system. And what you see here at the right-hand column is $108 million worth of parks and recreational facilities, and another $39 million worth of open space. As we told you last March, we're separating those two because they have different outcomes in terms of your funding strategies. You'll see that in a couple more slides. These numbers are not what you paid for those parks. This is what it would cost you if you had to write a check tomorrow to replace everything you've got from the ground up. Why are we calculating the replacement cost? Because the impact fee isn't asking newcomers to pay us for old costs. We're asking them to pay for today's costs. And so this is what today's value is of your park system. So we're going to take that $108 million and we're going to divide it by the 55,708 of us who are here now. That's residents and employees and visitors. And we get an answer of $1,940. We do the same thing for the open space. It's an additional $714. These are the key numbers that we want to ask new people to pay. But pursuant to state law, we have some adjustments to take into account to comply with those rules. So we begin by converting the per person number from the present into a total dollar figure for the future. If there's another 7,900 people coming from an earlier slide, and if they each need $1,940 worth of parks from the previous slide, then we need $15 million worth and another $5.6 million from open space. That's what we need. The questions are, do we have any of it already? If we already owned it, we wouldn't be able to charge it again. That's the middle column. It's called reserve capacity. By definition, you don't have any reserve capacity because we're attributing the success you've had in buying parks so far. We're saying that's for the folks who are here. And the new folks need to keep up with that. We didn't pre-purchase parks for growth. New growth needs to match this number. So this is a technical requirement in the law, and we included it in our study to just demonstrate that there was no reserve capacity. We still need $15.3 million of new parks. And now we're going to look at your capital facilities plan in which you have a list of park projects that you specifically want to build. You've already adopted that. And we're going to find out whether or not there's already other money that you've committed, secure money, that you plan to use for those parks. And a detailed investigation of this, and it's in our technical appendix of the report that lays out every project by project, we concluded that 8% of the $15 million cost is covered by other sources that you already have identified. On the open space, you've got 2/3 of the cost. Remember, the Wayne Golf Course is not in there, but the open space projects you did have listed have substantial other secure revenue identified, leading to be about 66%. So the amount that the city is providing is multiplying the dollars times the percentages, and the city's going to provide $1.2 million for Parks and Rec, $3.7 million for open space. That leads us to make further adjustments. We subtract the dollar amounts of the city share from the total need, and what's left is the amount growth should pay. So we want growth to pay $14.1 million for parks, $1.9 million for open space. Now we have to call another time out and say, did your capital facilities plan have enough park projects in it to get to those numbers? And it turns out that when we divide those numbers by the growth population, and our $1,900 number drops to $1,700, and our $700 number drops to $240, we have to make the adjustment for the fact that actually there's not enough in the capital facilities plan. We need $15.3 million for parks. You've only got $12 million, okay? That's not a responsibility. It's not an error. It's not the fault of the city in getting to that point. You had a good way of thinking about your park projects, and it's still fundamentally sound, but you asked us to bring best practices of how to think about what is needed, and our new method of identifying the need based on the investment, not on the acres, has given you a bigger number. Now, you can grow that number in your next capital facilities plan. You can add more projects and take that 81% and turn it into 100%, and we won't have to discount the impact fees. But we can't change our numbers until you do that, and you're going to do that long after we've met to adopt this. So we're recommending that you adopt the new higher fee we've calculated and then make that adjustment the next time you do an update within a couple of years. The adjustment for open space is substantial. There's only 31% of the need being met, and so we're going to have a substantial reduction in the open space fee. And here's what those numbers will look like. The $1,700 number is going to be reduced down to 81% of its original number, so it's down to $1,400, and the open space drops to only 30% of $240, so we're at $76 for open space. And we now apply those numbers to the future development, and these are the recommended fees, and in a minute I'm going to compare them to the current fees. This is another change we talked to you about in March. You have been charging a flat rate for every single family house, regardless of whether it's big or small, and then you've been charging a different flat rate for every apartment in small apartment buildings, regardless of whether it's big or small, and you have yet a different rate for large apartment buildings. But the real impact, as we now know, and our report gives you the raw data for it, is that bigger places have more people, and more people, therefore, more impact on the park system. So we have changed your system from a flat rate based on the type of housing. We no longer care about the type of housing, we care about the size, and we're recommending these 4 categories: less than 500 square feet, 500 to 1,000, and so on. And we know from other data that's in the report that the larger the property gets, the residential property, the more people there are, and therefore, as you see here, the higher the fee. Non-residential we're treating all development the same so that you don't get into the hassle of what if somebody changes a dry cleaners into a bookstore or a restaurant into a lawyer's office. All those changes in use with different land uses, which can be really complex. Cities are getting comfortable with the notion of a single land use category, and as you can see, it's not huge. If you're building commercial development, you'd probably rather not pay $1.09 per square foot, but it is only $1.09 per square foot compared to the fact that the construction cost is typically $100, $150, Class A office space $200, $250. So just like the house impact fee doesn't stop houses, it increases their cost, the commercial impact fee isn't going to stop commercial development. It's going to increase its cost in a very modest, fair way to help them contribute. And in a few minutes, we're going to give you an option so you see what this looks like without the commercial. If we take away the commercial, we have to increase the residential, and we'll show you what that looks like, and it's a key choice for you to give us some direction on. So the red or orange bar on this chart shows your current fee for a single-family house, $1,345. Below that number are a bunch of zeros. Those are cities that you often compare yourself to or have been compared to, and they're zero because they don't have park impact fees. Maybe they didn't need the money. Maybe they needed the money and couldn't get it adopted. Maybe they had a lot of grants. Each city has its own reason. It's the cities above the orange bar that are the cities that you compare yourself to, not the ones in green, that's what we're recommending, but starting in the upper left, Sammamish, Mill Creek, Issaquah, Olympia, going on down. It's in order from highest to lowest. And what you see with the green numbers is we're proposing to replace the orange number with the 4 green numbers. A single-family house wouldn't pay a flat fee, it would pay based on its size. And you can see that a small single-family house is not going to pay very much, and the largest single-family house is going to pay substantial, but it's still 5th or 6th on the list. You're not going to be the highest in the state. The commercial fee that we're recommending is, as I mentioned previously, $1.09 compared to Edmonds $1.34. Issaquah and Redmond have actually ranges for different land use categories. We don't recommend going there, so we've got a single category for you. And lastly, about the fees that we're recommending, and then we'll give you the option of a residential only fee. How much have you earned and how much might you earn? In the upper left corner, you can see that since you adopted the program in 1998, through and including last year, you collected a total of $3 million. Okay? That's good. That's substantial. That's really helped your park system. In the right-hand side, you can see we took just the most recent 6 years of that from 2010 to 2015, and it's $1 million out of that $3 million figure. But the new impact fees, even though they're going up significantly, they're not going up times 10, but we expect the revenue to go up times 10 because partly it's based on your growth being higher and partly by including commercial establishments in paying that $1 a square foot. The two of those will lead you to a much larger amount of money that you'll have available to improve your park system. I mentioned an alternative. What if you were wondering about, well, even though it's only $1.09 for commercial, not sure I want to do that. What would it look like if I didn't do that? And we promise to give you the answer. What we would do is go back to all those tables and we would just remove, we would erase all the employment information, and it would therefore cost us to change the cost per person because we'd get rid of the employees and visitors, but we still have $108 million worth of parks to divide something by, so we're dividing it by fewer people, which means a higher cost per person. Here's what happens in the recalculation. The column in red in the middle of the table would be the new cost as opposed to the one we're recommending. So we recommended for a 2,000 square foot dwelling unit, we're recommending $4,009. If you take commercial off the table, you'd have to charge that same dwelling unit $7,133. That would move you to the top of the list. And here's what that comparison would look like. The yellow bars are the 4 size categories of residential only. The green and the orange are the ones we showed you before. So we've recommended from the beginning that you should include commercial development with a modest and reasonable fee. As I wrap things up, let me summarize for you what we've changed and then remind you of the 2 choices that we're putting in front of you this evening and then take your questions. Here's what's different in the new fee compared to the fee you have now. We've gotten rid of the acres per person, the 3 acres per thousand or per thousand population. We've replaced it with the $1,940 of investment per person, because that allows you to buy not just dirt, but also the improvements to the dirt. Second, you've had a system of zones. We haven't talked about it tonight. We did talk to you about it in March. Some of your zones are so small and have collected so little money, you've actually had to refund it because you couldn't spend it before the state deadline ran out to spend it or return it. And the little zones, another reason to get rid of them isn't just refunds, it limits your flexibility. You can't divert all of your money to one park project. Instead, you've got to keep all these pockets of little bank accounts, and you can't help yourself where your most urgent need is. So we have replaced the multiple zones with a single citywide service area. Third change is you have had a two-tiered system. You've had regional parks that were citywide and local parks that were for all these zones. We're replacing those two tiers with a different two tiers. We have parks and recreation separated from open space because they have different funding sources in your capital facilities plan. We're recommending that you add commercial and it be residential and commercial paying the fees rather than residential only, which is what your current fee is. We're recommending that you get away from a flat rate for all houses regardless of size, and you recognize that bigger houses and bigger apartments and bigger condos have more people and they should pay more. So we're replacing the single size system. I want to ask you two questions this evening, and as part of our discussion on questions and answers, tonight is not an action night, so we're not asking you to vote on things, but we will be coming back to you depending on your reaction tonight. We're on the agenda for next week for possible action. We'll have a draft ordinance for you, and we would like to bring to you an ordinance that reflects your best thinking, your informal consensus this evening on two questions. And that is, what should we do about the residential and commercial compared to residential only? Do we charge commercial the $1.09, or do we not and charge the residential a higher number? Okay, because we can bring it to you either way. We're recommending bring it to you with both residential and commercial. And whatever you tell us tonight about informal first reactions isn't binding. You can say bring it back that way, and then you can change it next week, or vice versa. But it'll help us bring you the best draft ordinance. And the other question that I want to put in front of you is when should this take effect? Legally, when you adopt an ordinance, it can take effect in a matter of days. But this is an ordinance that's going to change rates, and these rates are going to affect development that has been in the pipeline. Builders have been talking to property owners, entering into contracts for specific amounts of money, and if you suddenly show up a week after this is all over and say, oh, you know, that fee that used to be $1,300, it's now $4,000, that developer and that property owner didn't see it coming, and it's unfair to them. So what most cities do is build in some kind of a delayed adoption, either 30 days or 60 days, or maybe as many as 90 days, so that stuff that's in the pipeline can get to you. Yes, they get to pay the old fee, but they built their whole project around the old fee, and it's fair to them to leave it at that. And then everybody who comes in after that has had this much warning to go, oh, okay, I haven't signed my contract to buy that building, and I need to add in the extra money so that it doesn't come out of the developer's pocket and it doesn't cause inability to do the project for the property owner. So, Mr. Mayor, anything that council members would comment on, again, we're not asking for votes tonight, but anything that we hear from you about, well, I like this way, I like that way, we'll listen carefully, in addition to taking any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Is it possible you could put up that slide that showed, had the green lines and the orange lines for what we are currently charging with the commercial in it, not just residential?
Okay, this has the commercial in the upper right corner. And I can also go back to the one that I think you were just talking about.
Yeah.
There we go.
That one. Okay. I just wanted to have that.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
good.
So questions from council for the Councilman Agnew?
I don't have a lot of questions. I have one basic question that I'd like to ask is can we use traffic impact fees or park impact fees that we collect in King County to pay for something in Snohomish County, since we cross both borders there?
And the answer is yes, because you're adopting it as a city government, and your city government just happened, your city happens to sit astride that boundary, and part of the city is in Snohomish County and part is in King County. The state law allows you to spend any impact fee dollar collected anywhere in the zones that we create, anywhere within those zones. So we're recommending a citywide zone so that you can take dollars collected in Snohomish and spend it in King, and dollars collected in King and spend it in Snohomish.
Any other questions? Councilmember, or Deputy Mayor Dewar?
So I had a question regarding the categories of square footage.
Yes.
I'm wondering if you've ever, or if it's typical to look at a category that's 2,000 square, more than 2,000 square feet, say 3,000 square feet.
Yes, we have. And in fact, we looked at it again in preparing the data for you. The specific information that we use for this data comes from a Census Bureau product, but it's not the decennial census every 10 years. It's the American Community Survey and the American Housing Survey that are done every 3 years, and in some cases every year. And they're done at the regional level, and then we normalize the data or adjust it to the individual cities. They have some data that tells us about the occupancy above 2,000 square feet. But the sample size is so small, there are so few houses reported in that, we don't think that it's statistically significant to rely on it. The other odd thing is it's real inconsistent. You go up the first 500 feet, it goes up a little more. You go up the next 500 feet, it actually goes down a little bit, and it's kind of all over the place. So we feel pretty strongly that your most defensible and most robust data is to just draw the line at 2,000 square feet, even though we both know that there are a lot of bigger houses. I will say anecdotally that larger houses, when you get to some threshold, 2,000, 2,500 square feet, they might have an additional bedroom or two. More often than not, the extra space goes into larger size rooms, a bigger living room, a bonus room, an entertainment or theater type room, bigger bedrooms. And that's what, again, it's not universal. Some bigger houses will have 6, 7, 8 bedrooms, but not most. And so we're comfortable with the result we have for you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Councilmember Sandberg?
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's so informative. Great learning experience here. So how do you think the value of Bothell's park inventory, park and open space inventory, compares to other cities that you've studied?
The best way to do that and normalize it, and I think your question implies this, and I'm going to take the liberty of going back a little bit here. If you look at this $1,442.72 per person, if we compare the value of your park system per person, we can get rid of the fact that some other cities are bigger than you are and some are smaller and some bought expensive waterfront land and others didn't, and we can just focus on a per capita basis. So my answer is going to be, I don't have a slide for this, but based on our experience, your number is competitive. You're not the highest and you are not the lowest. There are probably, out of those 80 or so cities that are doing park impact fees, there's probably a third of them that are using this methodology of the per capita investment basis. We could dig out the ones that we have that we did and get you a more detailed answer, and be happy to do that. Off the top of my head today, I would just say, as I did, I think you're competitive, you're kind of in the middle of the pack.
Okay. And can you go to the slide where you talk about the adjustment based on the projects that we have in our capital facility plan?
Yes.
So that's kind of disappointing that you lose because we don't have enough projects planned, if I understand right.
Correct.
We don't have enough projects planned in our capital facilities plan to match the existing level of service, and so therefore we're losing, essentially out of our calculation, 20% off of parks and roughly 70% off of open space.
Correct.
So what do you recommend that we do in our capital facility plan process that's coming up so that we capture more of this investment instead of losing it like we are doing here?
Before I answer that directly, let me just repeat what I said before. There should be no fault attributed or blame associated with staff, with council members, with the park board for where you are, because none of you had the advantage of the methodology we've brought, which is thinking about the investment you've made per capita and counting more than just the land, counting the improvements, and putting today's replacement value on it. It is new to you. And the fact that you now discover, looking in the rearview mirror at your capital facilities plan, going, ooh, it doesn't actually sustain that level, it wasn't a mistake. Somebody didn't do that on purpose. We're not trying to undercut the citizens of Bothell and the park system. But directly to your point, so now that we know that, thanks consultants for pointing it out, what can you as a city do about it? And the answer is you don't have to just accept it forever and that's the new normal. Every time you update your capital facilities plan, your capital improvement program, you can add more projects that add to the capacity of the park system. You can also add projects that repair existing things, but those won't count in the impact fee category. The more you add projects that add to capacity and that are not fully funded by a grant, that need growth to help contribute, that was another part of our calculation, then you will get closer to the number that you need for development. You can do that in next year's capital facilities plan. It won't trigger an update of this because you wouldn't update this every year. It takes way too much time, consultant dollars, everything else. Typically, these are updated every 3 or 4 years. But if you update your capital facilities plan more aggressively in the next year or two, when you get to that update, you'll be where you want to be. You won't be doing this discount.
Because it seems like thinking ahead to the next iteration of a park impact fee study, it seems like we want to maximize the value of our existing inventory and minimize the amount of local revenue to pay for that so that we can optimize the impact fee that growth would pay. Does that make sense? Because like you're saying, you say you can't collect 100%.
Thank you. That's all. I just wanted to make sure you remembered that if you get to 99.9, I'm going to go stop. Okay. But you could take from 81%, you could get to 99.9.
So from a policy level decision up here, we should be thinking about maybe in a future iteration of how do we maximize capturing an impact fee without, adding to these reductions that we have. And I mean, that's just a policy decision. Maybe we decide that's not how we want to approach things. We want to approach things, like you said, through asking all of the voters for a bond measure.
Or another thing that you have been doing with some success and that you probably don't want to stop doing, applying for grants. And when we get a grant, when the money's coming here from Olympia, we still have to reduce it from the new developer share. But would we say, no thanks, we don't want your grant because we want to make sure developers paying 100%? Most cities don't get to 100% or 99.9 or even 90% of the total because they do continue to take grants.
And is this study scalable in any way, or does state law really require that cities go through this very robust impact fee analysis every time? Like, say we were to add something to our capital facilities plan, like we added Wayne Golf Course, and that's an X number of acres. Would we be able to plug in that X number of acres and then adjust our park impact fee without a study, or is that not supported in state law?
Yeah, state law requires a study or set of formulas that have all of that math updated. That's basically so that the development community has the comfort that you as a council haven't cherry-picked the stuff you want to add in there. You have to be transparent with them and with all the rest of your constituents. Here's the whole array of all the information.
Okay. That's all the questions I have, but I know that he wanted us to answer his questions as well.
Yeah, he had 2 questions. One being, do you want to have residential and commercial in the calculation? And the other one is the effective date should be 30, 60, or 90 days. Those are the 2 questions he was looking for feedback on. Did you want to answer those now while you have the floor? All right. So
I support a combination of residential and commercial impact fees for your question number 1. And then number 2, when it should take effect, I am in favor of delayed adoption for the shortest amount of time, which is 30 days. We are always just thinking about the city's transaction with purchase and sale agreements for potential purchases of properties in the downtown area. We've always been clear that the impact fee rate structure could change. And so that's always been clear, at least in the city's dealings with potential purchasers of downtown property. That might not necessarily relate to what the situation that you said, where other property owners are engaged in negotiation.
Councilmember Agnew, you didn't have a chance to answer those two questions when you spoke.
Yeah, I'd be in favor of both residential and commercial, and I also be in favor of the 30-day adoption period.
Okay, Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you. Thank you for the great presentation and answering the questions that we had earlier. I also would be in favor of the 30-day adoption. And a question I would have before whether or not to go all residential or residential commercial would be, can that, I think it was $1.09, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Can that be skewed down?
We can discount it, but the discounting requirement in state law is that all development be treated alike. You can't have favored categories. So if you discounted the $1.09, let's say we took 10% off of it, we'd have to take 10% off the residential. You would just choose to reduce all rates by 10%.
Okay. So I guess I would be in favor of both residential and commercial.
Thank you.
So I had, the first question I had actually might be to staff is, was the Wayne Golf Course ever in the CFP?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. But was it a project on a priority list anywhere ever?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And that I think is a great loss for us that we didn't have that as part of this cycle. So if we move forward with the park impact fees, the way they're set, the way you've proposed them, and we get part of the CFP this year, the Wayne, Shelton View, and any others, per the questions I was asking, you'd mentioned 3 to 4 years that we would have to wait to do that again.
Yes.
And looking at the 3 to 4 years, the time span from 2016 to 2 to 3, 4 years out, based on your growth projections, roughly about 5,000 or 6,000 units.
Residential units?
Yeah, because I think your numbers were like 7,900 people. And then if you figured out how many units would we be looking at?
Right, but we were talking more of like 5,000 residential population. Again, I could pull that slide back up, but.
Yeah, could we look at that real quick?
So from 2014 to 2021 is about 4,000 increased population. And that, at say 2 persons per household, just to pick a easy to deal with average, that would be maybe 2,000 dwelling units.
So we have a population, the 41,000 is figured at what? How would we get to the 41,000?
That is your current population of residential population. This page is only residences.
Okay. And so we're going to be 4,000 new by 2021.
Right.
And if we take the 4,000, let's just round number 4,000.
Exactly.
And I think your figure was 2.81 on a 2,000 square foot home? 2.82 or something like that? On a 2,000 square foot home?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that, so that average would be 2,000, if you have one home that's 2,000 square feet, they're going to pay, I think it was $4,000.
Yes.
Is that what I figured?
Correct.
Okay. So if we go 2 to 3 years down the road, how much of that are we losing half of that, basically?
No. For one thing, adding the Wayne Golf Course by itself, in your question, you actually posed 2 other properties, and I'm not really familiar with them, so I can't give you an accurate answer on that. And on the Wayne Golf Course, we're aware of your reaching out to partners for helping for funding. And so while we would increase the value in an update, we'd also have to recognize that there was other money on the table for as long as it's in the capital facilities plan. Remember, that's in the open space category, as I recall, and that's the category that's currently 2/3 funded. Now, it might be less than that when you add Wayne Golf Course in, but it isn't a simple linear increase in the fee that matches the linear value of the Wayne Golf Course.
Right, so how I'm looking at it is if we can't increase 2 to 3 years, but we put it in the CFP this year, and then we're increasing our site, we're increasing population.
Right.
We're not able to account for that increased population in the current valuation that we have at the $4,000.
Correct. We're assuming that the valuation for the study period is the same throughout the 5 years as at the base we don't grow that in the calculation, if I'm understanding your question.
Yeah, so we're 81%. We want to be to 99%, but we're not going to be able to get to 99% for 3 to 4 years.
Right.
So we're essentially for 3 to 4 years staying at 81, losing the gap between 81 and 99.
Absolutely.
So essentially, when we get to that 3 to 4 year period, we go to increase it, we still potentially could be behind. Or are we going to be able to make up for what our population growth is at that time?
Okay, so there is a technique, very few cities use this because there's some risks involved, but there is a technique that allows you to set the standard not at what you have today applied to the current population, but rather to have an aspirational standard. We want to be better than that. We want to be better than that for our current population, and we want to be better than that with the newcomers. So you set the bar higher, and you ask impact fees to pay for that difference. But when you set the bar higher, we're required under state law to help you calculate how far behind you are for your existing population, and you'd have to demonstrate in your capital facilities plan funding sources, not impact fees, that would bring you up. So we can raise ourselves up by our bootstraps, but we got to pay for our own bootstrap raising activity before we can make the new folks pay at that higher level.
I'd like to hear some more information on that.
Okay.
On that program, and I'll take that off the sidebar with you.
Okay.
Okay, I think I got that. So I think I've got most of my questions answered from today too. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
How about from this side of the dais? Anybody? Any questions, comments? Councilmember Spivey?
Great. I support in question one, the commercial and residential. As far as timing, I think that there are a lot of things in the pipeline and at different levels in the pipeline, and I actually would support a 120-day effective date.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this side? Yeah. Councilmember Freed?
Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Welcome to rainy Bothell. It's been a lot of fun. I love hearing it on the roof. It's kind of fun. After just a few days of dry weather, you kind of forget the sound of rain.
Right.
So fee implementation over time is what I favor. We've actually done it in the past where there was a significant increase in fees, like to 100%. This is actually a 200% increase, 193% increase. Thank you so much for my generalities. I would actually have a 50% increase now and a 50% increase in a year. We've done significant increases like this over 3 years in the past, just because it's right for investors to be able to give them time to plan. I know there's one project just one block from here of 255 senior housing units. This will put probably a $500,000 burden on that project that they weren't expecting. And for affordable housing for our seniors, that's a big number. I think about a piece of property that we're selling here in the city that's going to accommodate probably 350 units. That's almost $1 million of additional expense to that project in and of itself. So what I get concerned about is when investors project forward, and it takes 2 to 3 years to get these projects to move forward, is we're putting that on the bottom line. That is a number that is a shocker and potentially could cause them to take a step back and reassess if they should be investing in Bothell or decide to invest in another city. So I think that's why I would support implementation. I'm not saying I'm against the fee, but I think you have to give people right time to plan for that investment. So I would support 120 days for 50%, 120 days, or sorry, a year for the other 50% of that fee. In regards to the commercial, how many other jurisdictions listed on that list did you have that with the residential and commercial?
So see if I can get to the slide. We've been very clear in all the slides and our discussion that the charging of commercial property for park impact fees is a relatively small percentage of the jurisdictions that have park impact fees. The main reason for that is Washington's law authorizing impact fees has a fairly high bar to get over in demonstrating the relationship between development and charging a fee. And for a very long time, when we were talking about 3 acres of park per 1,000 population, it was widely understood population meant residences. and very few cities were willing to step outside that box. Now we have a few that are going there, and it isn't because they're litigious and hoping for a lawsuit and just want to get challenged. It's because we have better understanding these highly technical appendices that I've showed you with the equivalent population coefficient. It's, great for economists and mathematicians. The rest of us have struggled to keep up with it. So you're seeing a growing number of cities, but still admittedly a very short list of cities in your comparative universe that have gone there.
Okay. So if it was implemented for commercial, our whole downtown plan would then have this new park fee go on it. So people that are in contract with multiple pieces of property that we are in contract to sell are now going to be facing significant increases or actually new fees completely for their commercial space. And we as a city had a plan, and that's really the citizens, 50 citizens came together about 10 years ago with the downtown stakeholders group and put a vision forward that we wanted to see commercial space fronting the boulevard. Now we're implementing and saying potentially, which it sounds like if there's 4 out of 3 so far that have said yes, a new fee. That was something new to them. So I won't be supportive of that. I would like to stick with residential, and then we could reconsider the whole fee as a whole, because these are goals that we're setting toward and fees that we're increasing to hit goals as you're stating. So if the commercial does get implemented, how would a change of use be treated? So I know there was a situation with a church in Business Park right by the Montevilla farmhouse, and they were having a change of use. A portion of their larger room, say something like this, now became small offices. They had to pay, as I understand, a new mitigation fee for an office use rather than a church use or whatever. How would that be treated underneath your suggestion?
So I can't speak for how you do or would treat it for your transportation impact fee, which does have multiple categories.
Yep.
We have a single non-residential. So from our viewpoint, we've done the calculation based on the average of all retail and office and commercial. Those earlier tables where we had employees by 8 or 9 different categories, we chose not to do a separate fee for each of them, but rather to average them so that we would avoid that change in use problem. So somebody who comes in and does any kind of a change of use within the commercial genre would have no park impact fee.
So a 50,000 square foot warehouse in our warehouse district would pay $1.09 per square foot of the 50,000 square feet with 4 employees inside.
Yes.
Now a 50,000 square foot office space at 400 square feet per employee, how many employees would that be in there? 120 or so. They'd still pay the $1.09 per square foot.
Correct.
Even though there would be 100 more people that would be needing to use our office or our park area.
The raw data in our appendix would allow you to do that calculation, and we could have, instead of one charge, we could have 10 different categories. And then we would trigger the change in use issues, and we would trigger the, oh my gosh, retail's paying way more than, there's no win-win in this. What we've opted for based on our experience in other cities is simplicity, and getting out of the change of use is huge. And keeping it simple for everybody coming in the door when the rates are low. I don't want to be seen at all in arguing or disagreeing with you about potential effects on individual investors and businesses. I don't mean to try and engage you in that way. But it is only $1.09. It's not $109 or $10.90. And the experience in other cities is, even for a 50,000 square foot warehouse, it's not a deal killer.
I would agree. On the commercial side, it's not a deal killer at this point. It's a fee that they didn't know that was going to come on top of, and I think about property we're selling down here and of course other investors in the city. You're going to charge us a new fee and you're going to put a burden of maybe $1 million on a project that we weren't expecting. It causes me some concern. I'm encouraging council to consider what concern that might cause to investors that we're directly dealing with and other investors that we want to see come within the city. So I think I've answered clearly. I would be for residential and implementation over a year at 50%, now 50% later.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Duder, you did not answer the 2 questions, I don't believe, but you did speak earlier, so could you answer the questions?
Yeah. So I support the residential and commercial. And right now I'm thinking 60 days. Okay. And I wanted to ask maybe staff, the PSAs where some of the investors or I'm trying to think, Lot P, I believe, maybe both, there were fees negotiated to go toward the half-acre park, and I assume those would be subtracted from any impact fee added on to their projects.
Yes, so the PSAs and the development agreements do say that the half-acre park fee is credited against their park impact fees.
Okay, great, thank you.
I'm the last one to speak. Thank you. You've done a great job.
Thanks.
Your presentation was solid. I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, you want to go another round of questions? Oh, okay. So is it unusual for a city not to raise its impact fees for parks for 20 years? Having your professional experience?
Unusual is the probably the gentlest word I can use. Extraordinary.
It's extraordinary. Okay. And then so in our ProSAP, we have
Just so you're not feeling alone, though, we are updating a fire impact fee for the city of Maitland, Florida that we did in 1998. So you're not alone, but close.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, just had to share that.
It's a national record. Okay. So in our ProSAP, it says that we have over target. We have more open space than what we targeted in our ProSAP. But then when you look at this, it looks like we have not targeted enough open space. So I guess, and I don't know if that's a question for the Parks Director or not, but am I missing something here? Because it says that we're only at 30% of the target for the new residents, but in the ProSAP, I think we're like at almost 200% of our target for open space.
As I recall, we did review the ProSAP. It's been several months, but my recollection is that it was using more of an acres per thousand kind of understanding. And so in that comparison, it may have appeared that compared to what your benchmark was, you were there. What we're saying is the dollar value of your open space is what it is, and we are assuming for it, just as we are for parks, that what you own, you acquired on behalf of the current population. You didn't get ahead, you didn't get behind, it just sort of matches. And we're simply asking the new folks to keep up with that. Please match us as we go along with the adjustments we've talked about, some fairly substantial adjustments.
Okay. Yeah, and it was mentioned earlier, and I guess I just wanted to bring it up again. So there are a couple different land acquisitions that we're looking at. It's not all open space. Some of it is, and I think some of it wouldn't be. Especially in our Snohomish County portion of the city, there's some real service deficits for neighborhood parks and that type of thing. And we do have a capital facilities plan update underway right now. And so I think what you said to us is that this typically doesn't get updated every 2 to 4 years. And is that, I guess you said 3 to 4 years. Right. We would probably want to update it sooner, wouldn't we, if we added a substantial amount of projects to the CIP?
That's really a call for you and the staff. As you've noticed, we've been around for 6 months. It takes a bunch of time. It takes staff time and some of your time. You would need to feel that it was really worth that effort to do it in less than 3 years. 2 would be pretty quick. Doing it next year would be, you'd be setting the record on the other side instead of waiting too long. You'd be getting your track shoes on and coming out of the Olympic starting gates.
Got it. Okay.
But you're not hearing from us that you cannot. We're just basing our experience on that balancing act of how often you make changes to the marketplace, how often do they see fee changes, and how much work is involved for staff and consultants, budget expenses. So sort of the happy medium for most cities is 3 or 4 years.
And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, Finance Director, but I think in our capital facilities plan we have identified parks, playground structures to replace, because we have some really antiquated parks playground structures. So were those in your calculation for the updated impact fee?
We analyzed every project in the current capital facilities plan, and we made a determination. Michaela, I don't have mine a copy in front of me. Do you recall, or do you have? We know exactly which projects we included and which ones we excluded, and some we included a portion, but not all, because a portion of it was growing the park system and a portion was replacing. You're not prohibited from replacing an old set of bleachers if the new set of bleachers is bigger. The piece that makes it bigger, if it did seat 100 people and now it can seat 150 people, that extra 50 people is a 1/3 increase. So 1/3 of the cost of that project could be impact fees. As to the swing sets, a similar kind of situation. If the swing set has 3 swings and 1 ladder on it, and you buy a new one with 4 swings and 2 ladders, the increment could be funded with impact fees.
Okay. Were we modest in our, I think is it in our capital facilities plan to update our playground equipment?
I actually said at a meeting, every project is accounted for. They have every project that is in here.
Okay.
I made sure.
Good, yeah, because the playground equipment's sad. I have little kids, and we go to other towns to check out the really cool playground equipment. So, except for the Blythe Park, we have new equipment there. Okay, so
Mr. Mayor, if I might, I think everybody's got it, but now that I'm hearing your question, I just want to take a chance of boring you by saying something that I want to be really clear on the record. The fact that you can't get to the Wayne Golf Course project with the current impact fee we're recommending doesn't mean that you're limited in the impact fees you would collect from our activity, our increased rates. It doesn't restrict which of the projects in your current capital facilities plan. All of those that are eligible, and that we calculated the eligible portion in our technical appendix, are immediately available. As you start collecting new impact fee dollars, you've broken the bonds, the constriction of the old zone system. So now you can pick your most urgent project and channel all the dollars there. You get a grant and you need the leverage money and it's eligible. You just use these eligible amounts immediately. We just can't take on a new project that wasn't in the document.
So just for my clarity, if we add the Wayne Golf Course, for an example, to our capital facilities plan, we can use these impact fees to pay for it.
I'm going to give you a partial answer. I'm not an attorney. I feel, based on my experience, that the odds are probably that that's a safe decision, because it would then be in the adopted plan. It wouldn't change your numbers. You wouldn't get any more money to do it, but you might be able to channel some of the dollars to that. So if you're expecting a grant but need leverage money, but I would very much want your attorney to review that in the light of the 8202 requirements. And I wouldn't call on them to do it on the spot.
He wouldn't like that, would he? Okay, so to answer your two questions, it makes sense to me, at least, that residential and commercial would keep us at least in the middle of the pack instead of shoving us to the top. So that would make sense to me. The effective date, I would like to know some information from the community development director on what kind of impacts. You don't have to say them now, but just kind of like looking at what we have in the pipeline, what makes sense from a 30, 60, 90 days period, and what kind of impact that will have when we make that decision at the next council meeting. And I think that's the conclusion of my
And Mr. Mayor, on the 30, 60, 90, and the 120 and the 50-50, none of these have to be exactly the numbers we offered to you. We wanted to give you examples of how to do this. In working with staff, we will undoubtedly work out what is the likely date that you could adopt this. Let's say it is next Tuesday. And since that's the middle of the month, instead of adding exactly 90 days or exactly 120 days, we'd probably round it to the first of the following month. So we'll be as close to your consensus number, but unless you want it to be exactly 60 or 90, in which case it would take effect on the 21st of August or something. We'll work with staff on implementation questions.
And I really appreciate your study of bringing this to light, because I think it's really important. I think the kind of the bottom line in my book, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's one way or another we need to pay for our park system, and it's either everybody that's here now or it's people that come in, they pay for the system we built for them to use. It's just like a wastewater system. If you hook up a new house to the King County comes down and charges you, I think it's 10 grand. Is it 10 grand? For where? For a King County hookup? Anyway, because they want you to pay for the infrastructure they built all the way out to the treatment plant. And I see this as the exact same thing. It's a park system, which has just as many benefits as a wastewater system. So it makes sense to actually ask newcomers to the system to help pay for the system that exists. So I am in support of this. I appreciate the in-depth discussion and calculations you provided us in your report.
Thank you. One last thing for the record. Even though our intent is, and we're on your agenda to come back in a week, we will be touching base one more time with stakeholders. We have a meeting, Tom, it's Friday this week, isn't it?
Yes, it's this Friday at 2 o'clock.
With the advisory group that they normally weigh in on a number of issues, and we've asked them to be there. We've specifically made sure that was scheduled at a time that the master builders representative could be there, because it's often a really sensitive issue for the home builders.
Yeah, that's important.
Good.
So we have one more council member that wants to go for another round of questions. Does anybody else want to ask more questions, or just, is everybody okay with the one more? Okay, Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, council members. So real quick, apartment complexes, how are those calculated? Do they pay park impact fees?
Yes.
By unit square footage?
Yes,
And condominiums are the same thing?
correct.
Are you familiar with any new legislation right now that just came out about when impact fees in general will be paid?
Yes, there was actually a bill passed a couple of years ago, and this July, you're going to get, if I'm on the same subject that you are, the legislature adopted a bill, and the governor signed it, that said that there is an option for developers of residential property to defer the payment of the impact fees for residential property. There's a couple of different options that are available. The city government's in charge of choosing which of those options, and it's mandatory, and you have to be in compliance this year, and your staff is already on this for both your transportation as well as the park fee. We will not bring forward next week a change to that. We'll wait and be consistent and have you adopt the change for both fees. I'm not sure that was the topic you were on, but
That was the topic, and it would be great that the council could see how that would affect us as far as long-term, if those fees are collected after the project gets a certificate of occupancy or after the unit sells. It would just be good to see that as well.
right, and I assume the staff team that's working on that will be anticipating those kinds of questions, and some other cities have already plowed that ground and can give some experience there too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
I know in the packet it talked about exemptions for low-income housing and other broad public purposes.
Yes.
Did any of your figures take that into effect, or is it just the figures are so much per square foot?
It's the latter, and the reason is that if you exempt some property, in fact, we're prohibited from shifting that exempted cost to the rest of the impact fee payers. The statute specifically says if you make an exemption, you cannot use impact fee dollars to pay for that, so we can't increase the fees to anybody else. What it means as a practical matter is anybody you exempt, you're going to look to the general fund, real estate excise tax, some other source of money other than impact fees to make up for that lost revenue.
Councilmember Freed.
Great, thank you. Appreciate Councilmember McNeil bringing up the issue of mitigation fees being paid at closing.
Yes.
This really is an increase on citizens, and we need to make no doubt. So it's a dual thing for me. If I'm an investor looking at the city, that I have to front the money, and also it's an increase of $1 million or $500,000 or whatever it might be, I might consider another jurisdiction because it might be more competitive for my buyer or whoever it might be to purchase a house in that jurisdiction instead. So city loses out on that potential revenue, our city does. But make no mistake, the citizens who are actually purchasing these units are the ones paying the fee. So we're increasing fees on citizens ultimately here.
Yes.
When it comes to credits, is it possible that we can have an option to pre-purchase credits? I've seen other jurisdictions do that. It could become a little problematic. Say if our fee right now is $1,500 and somebody knows it's going to increase in 30 days to $5,000, could somebody come in and buy 100 credits in advance, even though the project is not approved?
So the answer is, has anybody invented a system like this? Yes. Are there very many of them? No. Are they complicated, as you said? Yes. Have they led to gaming of the system? Heck, yes.
Yep.
Then we get into all kinds of, well, the smart property owner wants to buy those credits in $1,500 units and get credit for them in $4,000 units. And what your current city ordinance contemplates, which I think is more reasonable, is the credit needs to be valued against what the fee would be, not the gaming of the system of buy cheap and credit for high. But I won't go further than that because it's beyond the scope of a work session like this. We could spend way too much of everybody's time on it. It's worthy of discussion, but I don't want to take up time tonight.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that we should consider if it is an option. One thing, it can be good for the city because it does get revenue in ahead of what potential increases could be coming. Because if we have, if we look at potentially increasing the fee again next year, it could encourage people to buy fees in advance to make sure that they're not hit by that huge increase. So I think we should consider as a city.
All right, anybody want to go a second round? Anybody else? Councilmember Sandberg.
you said you thought, oh, I couldn't do it. I was just building on Councilmember Freed's comment about, trying to get in a project before fees increase. That might be, depending on the delayed implementation date that we set, that might be the impetus to get downtown development to occur even faster. So, I mean, that could be considered a catalyst for developers to move more quickly than wait out their entire due diligence period to start to close on their agreements with us.
Councilmember Spivey, I believe you're the only one that hasn't had a second shot. Would you like a second shot?
Well, sure, why not? I'll build on what Councilmember Sandberg had to say in that if we're wanting to spur the downtown development and get that going, then I think having the implementation date a little later, because we've got some PSAs and there's environmental stuff, and plus they got to submit their plans. So maybe a more realistic implementation date, it would be the first of the year. If that's what we're trying to achieve, is to help get that going, then, and I would support that. So the idea of using this as a tool is intriguing, and I think the probably a better date then for implementation would be the first of the year to maximize the benefit as a tool.
All right, everybody has spoken a second time. We're going to take a 10-minute break, okay with everybody, or we want to go 15? 15-minute break, so we are going to start again at 8:20, so the council is in recess.